episode of Amir's Anecdotes. Today, I have a very cool guest with me, Alan Lazaros. He's here today to talk about his journey. And Alan, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself for everyone?
So my name is Alan Lazaros. First of all, gratitude. Anything that I do that is aligned, that spreads sort of any level of self-improvement or awareness, I always try to sandwich it in gratitude. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah. And I don't take it lightly, anyone out there watching or listening. The fact that we have your attention is what you put your attention on determines what you say, think, do, feel, and believe, which is dictating your future. So I don't take it lightly. I started listening to podcasts 9 years ago, and they really helped me reconstruct a much better future. So thank you for listening or watching, and thank you for having me again. As far as introducing myself, I'm the sort of high level introduction would be I'm the CEO, co-founder, and co-host of a podcast called Next Level University. I podcast, I train, and I coach. That's pretty much all I'm doing at this stage, other than sort of tracking metrics and business design stuff. But my primary focus is business coaching and really helping people make sure that they are aligning their business success with who they really are and their passions. Because what I've found is a lot of people are either successful and deeply unfulfilled, or they're super fulfilled, but not actually super successful. And so my job really at this point, I didn't realize it until years and years later. I've been mentoring for 10 years, coaching for 8. And what I've come to realize now is that I align people's external success with internal fulfillment, because in my life, I was very externally successful, very young, but I was internally very unfulfilled.
Mm. I think a lot of people probably feel that way, especially now where I think we're losing a little bit of that like tactile feedback loop of, when people are working with their hands, right? And so they get that like physical feedback loop of your body, like getting a good workout. And now a lot of professions are or white collar, or you're sitting in traffic, or you're sitting at a desk, right? And it's hard to feel, intimately engaged and fulfilled when that's what you do for a living.
Yeah. And now last I looked it up, 5.58 billion individuals are online. And back in
Yeah.
2017, I think it was only 2 billion. So we've
Wow.
more than doubled the amount of people online, and that's exponentially increasing, obviously, because of Starlink now.
Yeah.
People have access to internet from all over the world, but the majority of e-commerce companies or my whole company is virtual. So I have a home office. We have an 18-person team, and we don't
Yeah.
see each other in person. So there's the in-person connection piece that's often missing. And then to your point, we're building things that aren't necessarily as tangible as they once were. So I think
Yeah.
I agree with that. That's a fascinating anecdote. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm about, right? Amir's Anecdotes. I'm chock full of useless information, and I try to then convert it into something actionable and useful. That's why I named the podcast what it is. Uh, so, Alan, when you think about your story, right, and who you are, what are all of the different ways that you would identify yourself?
The first one would be I'm an engineer. My business partner, Kevin, he was sort of blue collar gas station attendant, didn't go to college, didn't think he'd end up anything. And we're, very grateful to be very successful, very humble beginnings, both of us.
Hmm.
Same small town sort of thing. And I was he always says whenever Alan says disclaimer, I'm an engineer, he's basically saying, I now have permission to be a dick. And the
Yeah.
truth is, no, I think in numbers and formulas and statistics and probabilities. And I actually realize over time, that's actually very weird.
Yeah.
That's not
Yeah.
normal. Right. And I've never really made a decision, even when I was a kid, without like calculating in advance all the potential outcomes. And I realize
Yeah.
now that most people really are on autopilot. Just kind of, I read a
Yeah.
funny meme of something along the lines of this quote that said, I wish I didn't have critical thinking skills. Y'all seem so happy.
Yeah. Yes.
Or
I've seen
something.
that. Yeah. Like a lot of people just go off vibes, right? Or like
Mhm.
and I think a lot of that is because it's not intuitive and we're not actually designed that way. So if you try to imagine 100 grains of rice or 100 anything, like imagine 100 $1 bills laid out, right?
Mhm.
Your ability to visualize that is actually really poor. Um, there was something I read that said human beings like objectively have difficulty visualizing anything more than around 20 units of any item, which is coincidentally the number of fingers and toes we have. Like that's how much we
Yeah.
can count and visualize.
Which is wildly unfortunate because I calculated this, and I know you'll appreciate this. And I know we want to get into my story, but I have a client. His name is Cole, and I do monthly, I do biweekly, and I do weekly. And he went from biweekly to weekly. And I said, I just want to show you the math of the decision you just made. I said, is it fair? Is it fair that I help you improve yourself by at least 1% per week? And he said, yes. I said, okay.
Mhm.
Is it fair that I help you improve your system of success by at least 1%? So we do metrics, habits, and we track them. All my clients track.
Mhm.
And then the third one is it fair that I help you improve your execution of that system by at least 1% per week? Per week, not per day, because per day is not doable. Per week.
Yep.
And he said, yeah. I said, okay, let me show you the numbers on that. You're a CFP, you're a numbers guy. The power of compound, I mean, it's just unreal. Compounding.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
If you put $1 into a financial calculator, $1,
Yep.
and you grow it by 3% per week for 10 years, it becomes $4.7 million.
Yeah.
If you cut that in half and only do 26 weeks a year instead,
Yep.
2,444.
Wow.
What I am, you're fascinated by the compound effect of finance and good financial decisions, and I appreciate that. I respect that. I am blown away by the compound effect of personal growth.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
look at myself 10 years ago and I am alarmed. I am alarmed at how wildly unintelligent, how wildly unaware, how wildly out of shape,
Yeah. Yeah.
how wildly less than I was. And so just going from biweekly to weekly, he didn't double his results if he can stick with it. And that's the big if, because
Yeah.
humans cannot be consistent to save their life. And I'm not trying to be unkind. It's just true. And one
Sure.
of the reasons is they don't understand the math. He didn't just, double his personal growth. He, whatever 4.7 million divided by 2,400 is, he
Right.
did that amount of X. So it's
Incredible.
not intuitive. Compounding is not even remotely intuitive.
No. Um, Not at all. And our ability to scale that, like I was saying, is not great. And on purpose, right? Like we are as a species not people that were designed to do that at scale, right? Um, so you self-identify as an engineer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also I would presume you self-identify as a man and as an
Yes.
American, and you are all sorts of other labels. What else do you kind of self-identify as?
I would say CEO, which is
Hmm.
basically just saying that if the company fails, it's entirely your fault.
Yep.
And if you succeed, none of it had anything to do with you. I'm kidding. But
Yeah.
it does feel that way sometimes, right? All the responsibility, which is,
Yeah.
important. I self identify as someone who I decided when I was very young that I wanted to be fulfilled because
Hmm.
I grew up in an environment that had very few, very few fulfilled people. And this is sort of late 90s, early 2000s, particularly in the dot-com bubble US. My stepdad worked for a company called AGFA, and they did hospital
Hmm.
computers. So we were around a lot of people who had what I call a pleasure-centered paradigm. And a pleasure-centered paradigm is a deep, unconscious belief system that life is about having as much fun as possible,
Hmm.
which in the short term can seem really cool, but in the long term is wildly devastating.
Sure.
And so you can pay now and play later, or you play now and pay later. And my family always chose play now, pay later,
Hmm.
which was just a terrible, unintelligent decision. So when I was in my early 20s, my mom, she was like, "Why does it matter to you so much? Why do you care about intelligence so much? Why isn't it enough to just be nice?" And she said it like that, and I remember thinking that's got to be the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And the reason why I said, "What's the difference between a smartphone and a dumb phone?"
Yeah.
A smartphone is more capable. And I'm not trying to be pretentious or unkind, but if you aren't focused on trying to be more intelligent, you're basically going to make poor choices. And if you make poor choices, you're going to have a worse life. And if you have a worse life, you're going to be unfulfilled. And if you're unfulfilled, you might play the victim and then blame others or blame the world. And
Yep.
I think that all good things start with personal responsibility because my father passed away when I was 2. My stepdad left when I was 14. My childhood was very, very challenging, extremely humble beginnings. But fortunately, I believed in myself and I worked hard, and I was also trying to get smarter. I mean, I already learned from you a couple things today. So
Thank you.
I
I
seem
appreciate
very
that.
arrogant externally to most people, but internally, I really do want to learn everything I can. And I feel like if
Well,
we all, yeah, good.
you prefaced with like, you're an engineer, that means you're a dick. So, we're at least consistent, right, on the messaging.
What it really means is I calculate. You know what else it is too? One of my main core values, I'll be quick with this, is candor.
Yeah.
And candor, I have it defined as a deep belief in both seeking and expressing objective truth.
Hmm.
And so when you're in high school and you're an engineering thinker and you're a math guy, and a girl says, "Do I look fat in this?" and you say yes at level 6 out of 10, that goes horribly wrong. And then you basically learn to like exile the way you really
Sure.
think. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's
And
yeah,
yeah.
I've been in a similar situation. It's because I'm also a math-based thinker, so I get that.
Mhm.
Uh, but so we've peppered in actually some pieces of your story so far, right? So your father passed when you were 2, and my condolences once again. I mean, that's tough, and I understand that. And my father passed when I was 17. Your stepdad left when you were 14. You were financially struggling. Um, and then, so tell me a little bit more about just kind of those milestones and goals. So then you went to, and I presume finished high school.
Mhm.
And then did you go on to get a college degree?
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay.
So father passed away at 2. Had a stepfather from 3 to 14. 14, he left, took his entire extended family with him, and I haven't seen or spoken to any of them since. I did talk to my stepdad a little bit on Facebook Messenger, but I've never seen him since.
Hmm.
And uh, after that, so he took 90% of the income with him, and this was sort of, like I said, late 90s, early 2000s .com bubble. And in
Yeah.
the U.S. economy, statistically, even though a lot of people don't know this, is by far the largest. And
Yeah.
so I grew up in Massachusetts, and we did, it was boats and ski trips and
Sure.
snowmobiles, and my mom drove a BMW. And then when he left, I got free lunch at school now because our income was so low. Like that was such a
Wow.
drastic change for our
Yeah.
family.
Wow. Yeah.
And so I kind of two trauma responses. There's fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, but I chose to unconsciously. I was 14. I didn't know what the hell was going on. But
Sure.
the unconsciously, the trauma response was fawn,
Hmm.
socially, which was just don't get abandoned. Because
Mm.
at that same time, my mom got in a fight with my aunt Sandy, and we got kind of ostracized from my mom's side too. And we didn't really
Oh.
associate with the McCorkles anymore, which is my birth father,
Hmm.
his
Hmm.
family. And so, I kind of lost 3 families by the time I'm 14.
Jeez.
And I
It's
responded
brutal.
to that. Yeah. So I responded to that in 2 ways that I now understand. I didn't know at the time. None of
Hmm.
this was conscious at the time.
Right. Right.
People would come to me and say, "These are the best years of your life." And I would say, "God, I hope not. Like,
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
atrocious. I don't even know
I
what you
I
guys are talking
absolutely
about."
can resonate with that. Yeah.
And it turns out those people, no, no, no. High school was the best years of your life, sir, not mine.
Hmm.
Because your life got worse because you got worse. But ultimately, the 2 trauma responses, one was fawn, which is the one people don't know. I didn't know it until my 30s, which is just appease. You just don't
Hmm.
poke the bear, appease, appease, appease. You become this sort of social coward that you just don't tell anyone all of what
Hmm.
you really believe, especially not as an engineer, because then no one
Right.
likes you. It's this whole thing. Goodwill Hunting is a good metaphor for that,
Yeah.
right? He
Yeah.
just doesn't want to get abandoned, even though he thinks everyone's kind of an idiot.
Yep.
And when in reality, he's just a genius and doesn't get it. But the second piece was aim higher, work harder, get smarter. So
Hmm.
behind the scenes, when no one was watching, I became this like super achiever dude. So I got straight A's through all of high school.
Hmm.
I got what's called the President's Award. It's behind me. It's signed by George W. Bush. And it means you get a 95 or above GPA every report card for all report cards all through high school. And I got
Wow.
all the math and science. So I was a big math and science guy. English and writing weren't my thing. But I got, tons of scholarships and financial aid because when my stepdad left, I wanted to go to WPI, which is Worcester
Hmm.
Polytechnic Institute. It's like a mini MIT in Massachusetts,
Yep.
one of the best engineering colleges in the world. And that was my dream. My uncle Merle was the track and field coach there. So that was my dream since I was 10 years old. And when my
Hmm.
stepdad left, it was 50 grand a year. And when
Yeah.
he left, I didn't know how I was going to go. So even if I get in, I don't know how I'm going to go. So I got
Right.
as much financial aid and scholarships as I could. I got my computer engineering degree there, which was atrociously difficult. And,
Yeah.
and then I graduated with high distinction, and then I got my master's in business. And then after that, it was post 2008. So it was 2011, I graduated my bachelor's. 2012, I graduated my master's. And that's when the economy was coming back.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of wrote, industrial automation, global product manager, all the different tech
Yeah.
companies, iRobots, Insada Technologies, Oz
Great.
Development, and so that's when I
Yeah.
just felt, and I went from 65 to 85, 85 to 105, 105 to 125, 125 to almost 200. And I'm in my early 20s. I don't have a mortgage. I don't have kids. My rent is 500
Wow.
bucks a month. I drive a 2004 Volkswagen Passat. I paid
Yeah.
off 84 grand worth of college debt in a single year, which I now
Wow.
realize is weird. I didn't know that was weird
Right. Right.
back
You're just
then.
going through the motions and working hard and grinding. Yeah.
Right. And then I had 150 grand in an investment account for Vanguard with all
Hmm.
stocks and tech companies that I knew would win. I had a high
Sure.
understanding of what I thought would win,
Sure.
particularly in tech. And then I got in my car accident, and my
Mm.
dad died in a car. So for me, this was sort of my existential quarter life crisis, second chance my dad
Yeah.
never got. And that's when I flipped the script, started down my sort of personal growth journey. And that's how I've, ended up here. That was
Wow.
10 years ago.
Wow. So then you're 36 then?
Yeah.
Wow.
As of Sunday.
Wow. Happy birthday.
Thank
So,
you.
you're 36 now. You have had this incredible, incredible journey. And when you think about all the different phases and chapters of your life, when you think about the most stressful and most difficult financial situation that you were in, what comes to mind?
So when I was I drove across the country in my early 20s. I've always been a big film buff, and one of my many dreams, I now realize I'm kind of a weirdo with so many different dreams, but I drove out there. I was with a friend. His name's Ryan, and he was gonna be an actor, and I was gonna work in show business, the behind the scenes business side of Hollywood,
Sure.
uh, which I just always loved film. And anyways, we drove across the country. It was unbelievable. The
Yeah.
Rockies were gorgeous,
Yeah.
but ultimately, I was out in LA. I was living. So if you walk outside my apartment, if you take a right, it's kind of dangerous. If you take a left, you basically are on Sunset Boulevard,
Wow.
and I can see the Hollywood sign. So in the heart of LA, and which personally not a fan.
Sure. Yeah.
Not a fan. Kind of, Hollywood media makes it look better than it is. I'll tell you what.
Sure. I mean, a lot of East Coast, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut people feel that way about the West Coast. So I get it.
Yeah, not a fan. Although San Diego was pretty nice, but ultimately, I got a bunch of calls. My girlfriend at the time, so some family stuff, and really, what was happening is the home we grew up in was when my stepdad left. He got the apartment building and the yacht. We got the house and the dog, and we didn't know how to keep the home in the family because it was a really nice home, 5 acres, big
Hmm.
pond, small lake, little piece of paradise. And one
Yeah.
of my goals was to keep that home in the family. We have actually
Right.
since sold it, but ultimately, I ended up saying, okay, family needs me. I'm coming home. I came
Hmm.
home, and that's when I went from 65 to 85, 85 to 105, because
Right.
in show business, and this was wild for me, no one knew what WPI was. Like, I'm going from a computer engineer with an
Yeah.
MBA to like
Right. No one's heard of your little
no
school in
one even heard of my
Massachusetts.
school. What is it's like?
Yeah.
Yet in the tech space, everyone
Yeah.
knows WPI,
Right.
right?
But not in
So
the film and entertainment space. They're like, yeah,
that didn't
great.
work at
Yeah.
all.
Did you go to
Which
Juilliard? Like, what do you do? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's so funny. I actually ended up having an interview actually at SpaceX that I had to cancel, which
Oh,
is
geez.
yeah. See, so but ultimately, I came home, and I just money, and I
Yeah.
kept the house and all that kind of stuff, and we've since sold it and all that. But ultimately, that was the hardest financial time in my life, was when I was out in LA. I was broke as a joke,
Hmm.
and I was trying to get a job, but no one knew my tech school. And I went to
Right.
one of the best tech schools in the world. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, all my friends are doing very well, right? Apple and DraftKings, and so
Yeah.
I'm feeling like kind of a loser out in LA chasing my dreams, right? And my
Yeah.
family's in trouble, so I came home, and in Massachusetts, everyone knows WPI. Everyone in
Right.
tech knows WPI. So
Right.
I did very well when I came home. Yeah.
Got it. So the most stressful and difficult financial situation was being broke in LA, trying to
Mm-hmm.
chase your dreams. And the solution to get out of that was to come home. Now,
Yeah.
and kind of go back to your roots, right? Almost, it sounds almost like it was giving up on your entertainment and showbiz dreams and kind of sticking with the technical trade that you had kind of educated yourself in.
Mm-hmm.
And how did that affect your like sense of self identity?
Well, back in those days, I don't think I really thought a lot about identity. Unfortunately,
Sure,
now
sure.
all my clients, we do goals, metrics, habits, skills, and identity. And if you don't have the identity aligned with the goal, I mean, you're
Yeah,
either going to get the goal and be unfulfilled like me, or you're going to never get the goal because it's not aligned with who you are.
right, right, right.
I don't know how it affected my identity. In hindsight, it probably felt like quite the failure.
Sure.
And you know what else it was too. It's kind of go try to sort of quote unquote, this is unconscious, but like save my family at the expense of my own calling sort of thing.
Hmm.
Jeff Bezos, regardless of what you think of Jeff, he has this really cool quote that I like a lot, which is some people have a job, some people have a career, and some people have a calling.
Hmm.
I always had a career. I was always trying to build a resume. My friends from home, I never
Hmm.
understood. It's like, are you thinking when you're young, you don't know how different you are? I always
Hmm.
joke, I say, Elon Musk and his 10-year-old friend, when they're 10, have the same net worth.
Yeah,
It's not until 20, 30, 40, 50 where
yeah.
you go, oh, okay, so you guys think really differently. I went in hindsight, and again, don't associate me with Elon necessarily or anyone actually, but the point that I'm trying to make, and the reason I use Elon is because everyone knows him, but, and obviously they know him as someone who thinks differently, for better or for worse.
Sure. Yeah.
But anyway, so when you're a kid, you don't know how different you are.
Oh, yeah.
And then when you get older and then you reflect back, you go, oh, so like no one was really building a resume
Yeah.
and thinking, like I always said my career wouldn't even start until my 50s.
Right.
And I'm so weird in that. Like
Yeah.
time perspective, the compound effect, everything we've already
Yeah.
talked about. Like I'm not kidding. My career won't even really begin until my
Right.
50s. Like that's when I'm actually going to have credibility. I'm only 36 right now. So some people think
Right.
36 is old.
Right.
36, I'm not even close to tapping even a fraction of my potential. But
Right.
that makes you this sort of esoteric weirdo who
Yeah.
then
It also, I
struggles to
mean, it
get
also
along with
depends
people.
on what is the avenue that you're going down. Like if you are a professional athlete, you're way past your prime, right?
Right.
But if
Right.
you are trying to go like full on in terms of maximizing your skill and training and knowledge and your experience and actually conveying that to other people, then yeah, probably you're right, right? I think I read somewhere that that peak is actually age 46, so just shy of
Nice.
50, which is around the
Nice.
same timeline that you're thinking about, right? Just
Well,
intuitively.
how many people consciously think with a time perspective like that far out? And because
No,
legacy is my number one core value, my father passed away when I was young. Legacy's always been a focus, which is an
hmm,
impact far beyond your own life.
sure,
And when you're thinking infinite game, when everyone else is playing finite game,
sure,
you just end up so weird. And
yeah,
then combine that with the abandonment challenges, it was basically hide true self
yeah,
socially and then be, study Einstein when no one's watching type of thing.
yeah,
Um, and it just created this very weird sort of existential crisis sort of life where basically my relationships and my career were sort of never congruent until after
sure,
my car accident. And that's when I started really embracing and embodying publicly and socially all of who I really am. Because these people who
right,
think differently, by the way, they do hide it. They
yeah,
don't.
oh yeah,
It's we
we're social
belonging is at the
creatures,
yeah
yeah,
we're social creatures. So I would rather belong than actually tell you how I really think,
right,
and or you don't want to hear it because every time I talk about it, it's just crickets
sure,
in the room, right? So
yeah.
yeah.
So in the premise of like the Amir's Anecdotes show, right? So we think about your lowest financial point and then what was the solution? And the reason why I frame it that way is for a lot of the people that I've interviewed on the show, the in that low moment, there's this like self-isolation that people do. And they'll say like, well, I can't find someone to help me, like a financial advisor or a lawyer or a
Hmm.
coach or a family member. They won't understand, they won't get it because I'm so unique and no one's ever faced this problem before. And on my side of the table, as a licensed financial advisor, I speak to so many people where they're in a really rough financial situation, and there is usually a way out. And sometimes you don't have necessarily the skills or training to do it, and that self-identity of isolation and uniqueness is typically untrue. Typically, a bankruptcy attorney has seen hundreds of people file for bankruptcy in different scenarios, right? An estate planning lawyer has seen all sorts of different types of mixed families with stepkids and step parents or single moms, and has had to help those people navigate that. So they have the skills and training to help people that are kind of self-isolating. And in your case, it was actually almost the opposite, where it was you were kind of self-isolating in this dream chasing and were
Mm-hmm.
called back to your roots and to your family, almost not even of your own choice. And it's very reminiscent of like Joseph Campbell's The Hero with a
Yeah.
Thousand Faces. Like that was your call to action.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that was, you can choose to say yes to that call to adventure or not. And in this case, you had that strong pull to take care of your family. You went back, and then that is how you really flourished. That's really
It's
interesting.
it is fascinating that the hero's journey piece, become the hero of your own story. Joseph Campbell, the victim, villain, hero guide, and that sort of journey. I think that in some ways it was metaphorical to the Lion King.
Sure.
It's always one of my favorite movies, as well as Good Will Hunting. I never knew why, and now I
Yeah.
know why. And in hindsight, it's always 2020, right? So now it's, oh, okay. So father passes away in the Lion King. He kind of goes off, and you know, then he eventually comes back to Pride Rock and realizes, oh,
Yeah.
this is different than I thought, and
Yeah.
now he needs to actually own who he is, type of thing,
Yeah.
and stand up to
Yeah.
Scar. And in many ways, that's metaphorical to my life, but also many people's lives. That's why
Yeah.
these forms of film resonate so much with us. Uh,
Absolutely.
but ultimately, I think the courage piece, what I've come to understand is that it all comes down to two different types of courage. I had competence courage. Competence courage is write the resume, do the cover letter, apply to the
Hmm.
job, try the thing, external success. That's a self belief, self efficacy, external skill oriented, hard skill oriented thing.
Yeah.
For me, it was always social. That was
Right.
social courage is very different than competence courage.
Totally. Yeah.
Competence courage was easy. I don't
Yeah.
struggle with self doubt a ton. I know that's rare. It is what it is. I feel like I can succeed at, within reason, most of the things that I want to achieve externally. But socially, I never felt
Yeah.
super. Socially, relationships never came easy, because
Sure.
when you are so different, it's very hard to fit in, I guess. And deep down, I think you want to fit in, but you don't. It's this whole thing. So um, a lot of people don't feel that way, and statistically speaking, the majority of people do actually fit in, because it's a bell
Yeah.
curve, and most people are in the middle of it. But when
Yeah.
it comes to the financial piece, I always say this: the dark holes you find yourself in, the skills, tools, mentors, philosophies, mindsets necessary to climb out of the dark hole also build skyscrapers. So most
Hmm.
multimillionaires, if you research this, actually at one point were almost bankrupt.
Yeah.
And it's that moment of near bankruptcy that people who actually do have high self-belief say, you know what, let's go. Let's
Yeah.
and we all go through that. But here's the problem: a lot of people do shut down and turn
Yeah.
off. And
Absolutely.
if you are not ignited by failure, you do need coaches and mentors to help you, because people always ask me now, I've been on, thousands of podcasts, blah, blah, blah. Like, how did you not give up? It's like, honestly, I came to realize that there's a lot of people in my past. My childhood was, there was some good parts, but most of it was pretty terrible. There's
Sure.
something called an ACE score, adverse childhood experiences. And my ACE score, according to my therapist, her perspective, not mine, was like the highest she's ever seen.
Wow.
And I always knew that intuitively, because it was pretty atrocious. But ultimately,
Yeah.
people always say, well, how did you make that work? And
Hmm.
I've been wondering this my whole life, because there's other people in my past who went the other way.
Yeah.
They didn't aim higher, work harder, get smarter. That wasn't their trauma response. Their trauma
Right.
response was alcohol, drugs, whatever it was. And mine was too, a little bit. Like, I definitely dabbled.
Right.
But somehow I always found a way, and I think it comes down to self belief. I really do. And a lot of people don't check in with their level of self belief. If you have low
Yeah.
self belief, when adversity strikes, you're probably going to shut down instead of be ignited.
Yeah. So, um, number one, I agree with you. And number two, I think for anyone listening to this who has gone through those types of childhood traumas and is, trying to chase those dreams and is struggling, right? You can, take a page out of Alan's book, right? And sometimes it's go back to your roots. Sometimes it's stick with your family. Sometimes it's reach out to mentors, right? Financial advisors, lawyers, right? Accountants, whomever, business coaches, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's just, you got to put your head down and really believe in yourself, you know? Um, and that's kind of the key. So that's great. So Alan, I really appreciate you sharing that story with us. Before we kind of close it out in terms of uh, hearing that story and then how you overcame those adversities. Where can people find you, and is there any kind of service or offering that you want to plug?
Well, one thing I would say is if you're going to get a mentor, a coach, financial advisor, anyone who can guide you, make sure they are walking their talk and they're leading by example.
Yeah,
In hindsight, I had dozens of mentors and coaches, and some of them were great. And in hindsight, some of them were awful.
yeah, yeah.
And I was naive as hell. So like
Hmm.
there are people out there that really are full of shit. And it's
Yeah,
really important to understand that. So
yeah.
if they're not
Do you
walking their
have,
talk when no one's watching,
and
yeah, go
how do
ahead.
you, so yeah, I think that's actually really, really good advice for whoever's listening to this. How do you suss that out? How do you kind of figure that out and determine if someone is the right coach or advisor for you?
You got to develop a BS radar. And I
Yeah.
wish like if I could go back in time, I had a couple really good things going for me.
Hmm.
And I'm very grateful to have had a powerful mind and believe in myself. And I was also born in a state that helped me with financial aid and scholarships. And if it wasn't
Hmm.
for that, I wouldn't be where I am. So I'm very, very grateful. But you have to have a good BS radar. And I actually have a filter that I created. It's called UnMedSci. It's an acronym. And
Hmm.
it's anyone who's unstable, naive, manipulative, entitled, delusional, significance driven, arrogant, or immature.
Hmm.
And anyone who lacks leading by example. You have to be able to sniff out the people who are talking
Hmm.
more than walking.
Got it.
And so I say this to my clients, I say, I will never ask you to do something that I'm not also doing
Hmm.
ever. I can't. We have a journal that I sell. If I'm not doing it, you could look at the sales of our journal and it would be based on when I'm journaling.
Yeah, yeah. Wow.
I just will not say it unless I'm doing it first. And I realize now it's because in my childhood there were a lot of people who were telling me what I
Hmm.
should do, and fortunately I listened because some of it
Yeah,
was good advice, but
yeah.
they didn't do it themselves at all.
Right.
And in hindsight, you know how you have some mentors that as you
Yep.
grow and mature, they actually get even better, and then
Yeah,
some fall off the pedestal completely.
yeah,
Holy crap! So you just have to develop a BS radar. Like who do you think? I want you to think about this. Who is this person behind the scenes when no one's watching?
yeah. I
Are
like
they
that.
more behind the scenes when no one's watching or less?
That's great.
And your
That's really,
intuition
really good.
knows. Yeah, your
Yeah,
intuition knows. And there are people out there like me that are so cowardly that
yeah.
behind the scenes I'm actually more than I am right now because
Right,
I'm
right.
actually dialing down. Most people think I'm full of it. It's like I'm
Mhm.
dialing this down. This is
Sure,
I'm
sure.
actually way more intense
Yeah.
uh, behind the scenes. But yeah, who is this person? Like for example, someone who's preaching all this personal development stuff yet they're completely out of shape. It's
Yeah.
you got to question it. You
Yeah.
got to question it. And so yeah, just think differently, question everything. And yeah, if anyone wants to reach out, nextleveluniverse.com is our website. That's the best place. We have everything should be on there. And like I said, I'm very grateful.
It's great. Alan, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. And hopefully we'll be able to do a follow-up episode with you.
I would love to. Amir, thank you for
Yeah.
having me. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. And keep educating people. And I'm looking forward to learning more from you in a second about the stuff we were talking
Yes,
about.
yeah. Let's talk
Yeah.
offline. Let's nerd out a little bit. All
Yeah,
right.
let's nerd out.
See
Awesome.
you later.
Thank you.